The first sound in the valley was not the wind, but the absence of it. The air was heavy, frozen still, and every branch seemed to hold its breath beneath the weight of frost. The pines rose like black spears, the snow between them unbroken, too perfect to be real. It was the kind of morning when sound itself feared to move, when even the sun crept quietly. Through that silence, the lynx moved. He was almost invisible, a pale ghost among birches and shadows. Each step sank soundlessly into the crusted snow, leaving behind a trail that seemed hesitant to exist. His fur caught what little light there was, glinting faintly like frost. His breath came slow, steady, and white. The lynx wasn't hunting. Not yet. He was listening. There was something in the stillness, a tremor not of sound, but of memory. Beneath the snow, the earth held stories that the cold had tried to bury. The scent of men, of blood long frozen, of fires that had burned too long ago to still matter. And yet, the land remembered. He paused near a fallen spruce, one paw lifted mid-step. His ears twitched. Somewhere below, deep beneath the snowpack, came a faint crack, not loud enough for most to hear. But he did. The ground shifted slightly, the way ice sometimes does, before a river moves again after too long a sleep. He crouched low, his eyes narrowed to slits, golden and patient. Nothing moved. Then, a distant echo. Not a sound, a vibration. It passed through the snow like breath through cloth, subtle, deliberate, almost rhythmic. The lynx's whiskers quivered. The old rhythm, the one that came before spring. On the ridge above, a single human figure trudged through the drifts, the sound of her boots muted by the thick air. Dr. Etta Kroll was used to silence. Years of fieldwork in the north had taught her that quiet could be both friend and enemy. But this silence was different. It pressed on her ears until even her heartbeat felt intrusive. She adjusted the strap of her pack and checked her recorder. The batteries were half dead from the cold, but still blinking. Audio log, day 9, she said softly. Her breath fogged around the microphone. Temperature, -23, no wind, ambient sound level. She paused and glanced around. None. She hesitated as though the word itself might disturb the air. No bird calls, no ice creak, no echo. It's as if the snow is absorbing everything. She stopped walking, turned in a slow circle, and frowned. And something else. The subsoil sensors are registering vibrations. Not tectonic. Too shallow. Rhythmic. She lowered the recorder. Her breath hung between her and the empty trees. If anyone ever listens to this, she whispered, it feels like the ground is remembering something. Like fear. Below her, unseen, the lynx watched her silhouette against the pale sky. The faint crunch of her boots was the first man-made sound in these woods for months, maybe years. He blinked once, then turned his head slightly, listening again. The snow between them seemed alive now, shifting imperceptibly. Beneath its surface, the faintest of sounds moved, the slow cracking of frozen earth, the whisper of roots under tension. The lynx stepped forward. The sound stopped. He crouched again, waiting. The forest had gone too still, not resting but alert. The air felt full, charged. Etta began her descent toward the frozen lake below, unaware that her every movement was mirrored by the animal above. Her boots broke the surface crust of snow, leaving dark prints that seemed to sink too deep. She felt the vibration again through her soles. The recorder crackled faintly. Then, a low rumble. Not from above, from below. She froze. The lake ahead of her, smooth, flawless, white, shifted slightly at its center. Only an inch, but enough. A faint plume of frost lifted, as if the ice itself exhaled. Etta raised her recorder again. Her voice trembled. Recording continued. The surface of the lake just moved. No wind. Possible permafrost gas release, but she stopped. The sound came again. Not a crack this time. A slow, hollow thud, like a heartbeat. From the ridge, the lynx's ears flattened. His fur bristled. He recognized that sound, not as meaning, but as memory. He had heard it once before, in another valley, another winter, when the forest had held the same stillness before it broke. He turned toward the lake, his muscles coiling. For a long moment, he simply watched. The human figure below looked impossibly small against the whiteness, her movements hesitant, each step sinking into a sea of memory. The lynx stepped down from the ridge, vanishing between the birches. The snow swallowed his sound immediately. As he moved, the world seemed to listen again. The trees creaked faintly, then went still. The air tasted metallic. And beneath the ice of the frozen lake, something shifted, not with violence, but with purpose. Slow, deliberate, as if waking from too long a sleep. The lynx stopped at the water's edge and lowered his head. His breath formed small clouds on the surface of the snow. His reflection, faint, distorted, looked back at him from the frost. He blinked once, then twice, his tail flicking. In that thin silence between his steps, the snow seemed to breathe. The old rhythm pulsed through it again, older than fear, older than memory. The lynx lifted his head. The forest exhaled, and far beneath the ice, the earth began to remember what had once walked there, and why it had tried so hard to forget. By morning, the valley had vanished. Only a pale haze remained. Snow turned to mist, mist turned to breath. The trees along the ridge appeared as faint gray pillars in the white expanse. Dr. Etta Kroll sat inside her small field tent, the heater dead, her gloves stiff with frost. Her recorder lay on the floor beside her boots, a thin layer of ice creeping along its edges. The light on it still blinked faintly, the same one that had flickered all night, capturing hours of silence. She rubbed her hands together, leaning close to its tiny speaker. When she pressed play, the tent filled with static, then with something worse. Nothing. A perfect, impossible blank. No wind, no breathing, no shifting fabric, not even the hum of the recorder itself. Etta frowned and rewound the tape by a few minutes. Again. Silence. Not recorded quiet, but absence. She sat back slowly. The snow outside had stolen even the sound of her movements. Then, faintly, beneath the static, she heard it. A rhythm, low and uneven. It came and went like a heartbeat fading into distance. She turned up the volume. The pulse grew louder, but not constant. Each beat was separated by a stretch of stillness that almost seemed to wait for something. She realized she was holding her breath. When she exhaled, the recorder caught it, and the pulse shifted slightly, almost answering her. She froze. The heartbeat on the tape was reacting. By midday, the mist had thinned enough for her to see the lake again, a wide white sheet rimmed by black spruce. She zipped her coat, grabbed her pack, and began the walk down from camp. The air was painfully still. Her own footsteps sounded too loud. Halfway down, she saw movement. At first, she thought it was wind stirring snow from the branches, a brief motion, fluid and soundless. Then, she caught the outline, a body low to the ground, broad-shouldered, long-limbed, fur blending with the frost. A lynx. He was standing near the shore of the frozen lake, head tilted slightly, eyes fixed on the surface. Etta stopped dead. The animal didn't move, didn't startle. He was listening. After a moment, he turned his head toward her. The golden eyes met hers through the still air. Not fear, not threat. Recognition. Then, he stepped back into the tree line and was gone. Etta exhaled shakily and approached the lake. The ice was clear near the edges, smooth enough that she could see down several feet. Air bubbles hung suspended in it like tiny fossils. She crouched and touched the surface. It was colder than the air, and faintly vibrating. She pulled her glove off and pressed her bare palm flat against the ice. The vibration deepened. Not random. It came in pulses, uneven but deliberate, almost biological. Etta swallowed hard. She reached into her bag, pulled out the ground sensor, and placed it beside her hand. The small LED blinked green, then flashed once red, then again. She frowned. The screen showed no seismic activity. The vibrations weren't coming through the ice. They were coming from within it. She looked up, scanning the flat expanse. Impossible, she whispered. No heat source, no current. Then what's... A dull thud. She jerked back, eyes wide. Another followed, slow, deep, heavy. The ice shuddered beneath her knees. It wasn't cracking, just flexing, breathing. The recorder in her coat pocket began to hiss again. She pulled it out, switched it on. The pulse was there, louder now. But there was something layered beneath it this time. A low frequency, almost inaudible, like the shadow of a voice trying to form. She adjusted the gain. The tone sharpened, and for one impossible moment, she thought she could hear words, not spoken, but shaped by the rhythm of the vibration. A sound like a whisper carried by stone. We remember. Etta's throat went dry. She stared at the ice, her own reflection fractured by the shifting surface. Then, silence again. The lynx was watching from the ridge. He had seen her kneel, heard the strange hum through the snow. He knew the vibration in his bones, the same tremor that came before avalanches, before rivers broke open. But this was not the sound of movement. This was the sound of something waking. He crept closer, the snow barely stirring beneath his paws. The wind had died entirely now. Even the trees seemed to be listening. When he reached the frozen edge, he crouched low and watched the woman. Her scent carried fear, but also awe, that strange, sharp smell of humans who find something too large for them to name. He tilted his head, then looked down. Beneath the ice, faint shadows moved. Slow, almost imperceptible. The lynx flattened his ears and stepped back. The shadows stopped. The snow around the lake's edge began to sink slightly, as if something beneath it was drawing breath. The ice didn't crack. It flexed, bowed, then settled again. The lynx turned and slipped silently back into the trees. Etta stayed by the water, too stunned to notice his departure. By the time she returned to camp, the recorder was still humming faintly in her pocket. She sat at her small table, headphones on, eyes fixed on the waveform dancing across her laptop screen. She slowed the playback by half. The rhythm remained steady, but the spaces between the pulses stretched wider. In those spaces, faint overtones emerged, harmonics she hadn't noticed before. She isolated them, filtered out the white noise, and listened again. The sound was unmistakable. Footsteps. Not hers, not human. Heavy, slow, measured, as though pacing beneath a layer of snow so deep it muffled everything but weight. Her hand trembled as she reached for her notebook. The vibrations? They aren't random, she whispered. They're footsteps. And the snow, it's not reflecting the sound. It's holding it, like memory. She looked up toward the lake. Through the thin tent fabric, the horizon glowed faintly blue, the kind of light that comes just before a storm. Outside, the forest had gone silent again. In that silence, somewhere between one heartbeat and the next, the snow shifted. A single paw print, large, fresh, appeared just beyond the tent door. The edges were already beginning to fill with falling flakes. Etta reached slowly for her recorder. "Audio log," she whispered. "Nightfall. The lynx has returned." She paused, listening. The air trembled once, faintly, like a sigh from the earth itself. "No," she corrected softly. The snow remembered him. The morning came without color, only light, flat, silver, and cold enough to erase the horizon. The sky and the ground had become one seamless white, a world with no boundary, no direction, no promise of warmth. Etta Kroll woke to the sound of her own breathing. It was loud in the silence, too loud. She sat up slowly, rubbing frost from her lashes. Her breath hung in the air for a long time before fading, as if even the cold refused to take it. The paw print she had seen the night before was half filled now, snow softening its edges, still fresh, still close. She dressed in layers, her movements deliberate, each sound amplified by the weight of the stillness. The recorder was already on before she realized she'd turned it on. A habit now, though she wasn't sure anymore whether she was documenting the forest or confessing to it. The lake looked unchanged at first glance, just a white plain under a silver sky. But as she drew near, she noticed the difference. The surface had sunk slightly overnight. Not cracked, not broken. Simply lowered, like something heavy beneath had shifted position. Her gloves brushed snow from the ice. The glassy layer beneath was darker now, a faint blue-gray. She knelt, pressed her palm to it. The vibration came immediately, slow, steady, measured. It was stronger than before. She set the recorder down beside her and unpacked the contact microphone, pressing it against the ice. The signal spiked, filling her headphones with a sound that wasn't quite a sound, a deep, rhythmic tremor that felt alive in the marrow. She whispered, "Temperature minus 26. Lake surface moving again. Subsurface frequency approximately 1.8 hertz, consistent with biological rhythm." Her own voice trembled on the recording, but too slow for a heartbeat, too steady to be tectonic. She adjusted the gain. The tone rose, and within it, faint harmonics, overlapping in uneven intervals. She slowed the playback. The harmonics expanded. They weren't random, they were repeating. 4 low pulses, a pause too short, another pause, then again. Etta froze. "Pattern detected," she said into the recorder. "Almost. Structured." Her heart was hammering now, loud in her ears. She shut her eyes, listening deeper. The sound beneath the ice wasn't just repeating, it was responding. She whispered, "If you can hear me, move again." Nothing. Then, a second later, the surface shifted, just enough to make the ice groan faintly beneath her knees. She gasped and jerked back, eyes wide. "Oh my God," she whispered. "It's listening." From the forest edge, the lynx watched. His breath formed quick clouds in the air. He had followed her scent easily, the same sharp trail of metal and fear. But now, even he hesitated. The air around the lake felt wrong, heavy with sound that had no voice. His ears flicked back. Beneath his paws, he could feel it too. That slow rhythm, like a drum under miles of ice. The lynx crouched low, eyes fixed on the woman kneeling at the center of the frozen plain. She was still, small, fragile. Yet the air around her trembled, as if the entire valley was holding itself upright, just to watch her. He took one slow step forward. The snow sank softly beneath his weight. The vibration changed. The pulse rose slightly in pitch, just enough that even he noticed it. His ears twitched. The trees behind him creaked once, then went silent again. The lynx turned his head toward the ridge. The smell of the forest, pine, frost, decay, felt thinner now, fading. The world seemed to contract around the lake, every sound drawn toward that single center where ice met air. He took another step forward. The ground under the snow gave a faint sigh. The lynx stopped. He looked down and saw the snow trembling, small ripples radiating outward from his paw. The ice was vibrating in sync with his heartbeat. He stepped back quickly, but the tremor followed him slower, like a shadow that refused to detach. The animal bared his teeth soundlessly. The snow stilled. The pulse deepened. He turned his eyes back to the woman. Etta hadn't seen him yet. She was staring down through the ice, her face pale and drawn, breath fogging the surface. Beneath her, shapes moved, faint distortions in the darkness below, the outlines of something buried and vast. She whispered into the microphone, "There's motion under the lake. Large mass, roughly 10 meters across, moving slowly northward. Not water, it's denser. The snow above it is responding, absorbing the sound." She paused, pressing her hand to the surface again. It was warm. For the first time since arriving in the valley, she felt heat, faint but steady, pulsing upward. She drew her hand back and looked at her palm. Moisture, not condensation. Meltwater. "Temperature anomaly detected," she whispered, her voice cracking. "This isn't possible. It's minus 26. She turned, scanning the shoreline, the tree line, the empty mist. And there he was. The lynx stood half-shrouded in the fog, no more than 30 meters away. His fur caught the faint light, his eyes fixed on her. He didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't breathe. Etta stared back, frozen in place. Then, for the briefest moment, she heard it again. Not through her ears, but through the ground. A pulse. Hers. His. The same. The sound beneath the ice surged suddenly. Louder, deeper, resonant enough to shake frost from the branches nearby. The lynx flinched, growling low, backing away toward the tree line. The vibration followed him for a second, then stopped. The valley went still. Etta crouched again, heart racing. Beneath the ice, the shapes had stilled too. The vibration faded, but its echo lingered in her bones. She whispered into the recorder, "The sound reacts to presence, to motion, to living rhythm. It's not remembering fear, it's learning it. She switched off the microphone and pressed both hands to the ice one last time. Whatever you are, she whispered, I hear you. The lake gave a low, distant crack. Not violent, not breaking. Just a long exhale through stone. The lynx had already disappeared into the fog. That night the storm came. Sudden, thick, relentless. The tent walls shook under the weight of wind. Snow fell without pause, smothering every trace of sound, every footprint, every scar. Inside, Etta sat awake, the recorder's light blinking red beside her. The valley outside roared in silence. When she played the last hour of her field audio, she heard it, faint, layered beneath the hiss of the storm. Footsteps. Not hers, not the lynx's. Too slow, too deep. She turned the volume up, eyes wide. The steps faded, replaced by a long, steady breath, one that filled the entire valley. Then, a whisper so soft, she thought it might have been her imagination. We were here before the snow. The recording ended. Outside, the wind howled once, then stopped. And beneath the frozen lake where no one could see, something shifted again. Not closer, just awake. The lynx, far on the ridge, raised his head, ears pricked to the sound no one else would ever hear. In the silence between his steps, the snow remembered, and this time it did not forget.